Hello, friend. Thank you for joining me for this practice today. For this practice, you may want to have a couple of blocks handy. You may also want to have any cushions, blankets, pillows, or anything that would make your shavasana at the end as cozy and comfortable as possible. We will be starting in a seated position. So find one that is comfortable for you. Once you have found that position, if you feel safe, you may soften your gaze or close your eyes and just begin to drop into your breath, starting from your belly into your lungs and your rib cage, feeling it all the way around your body and exhaling it through your mouth. Again, inhaling through your nose, just finding that rhythm, and exhaling through your nose or your mouth. Continuing this rhythmic breath as you come and draw near to the presence of the Lord. For today's practice, we will be looking at a person in the Old Testament named Gideon. What is important to know about Gideon for today is that he was alive in the Old Testament, and it was during a time when the Israelites were being oppressed by the Midianites. So we find Gideon threshing wheat in a wine press. Now, those two things don't typically go together, but Gideon was there because he was hiding from his enemy, scared. And something we'll find as a common thread for Gideon throughout his time mentioned in Scripture is this idea of fear. A lot of his action and motivation is driven by fear. But what is so incredible about God and his response to Gideon is that he does not rebuke Gideon for being afraid, but instead he confirms to Gideon who God is. Instead of trying to build him up or fill him full of hot air, God reminds him time and time again that he is the God who is with him. He is the God who will be victorious through him. He is the God who gives him peace. So as we move and we breathe through this practice today, thinking of those things that you have in tow with you wherever you go, whether it's fear, anxiety, anger, unforgiveness, maybe it's something you can't even name. Let the God of peace not rebuke you or pump you up, but let him gently, time and time again, reaffirm who he is and who he wants to be for you. On an inhale, raise your arms up overhead. Exhale, release down to heart. Twice more, arms up overhead. And exhale, hands to heart. Once more, arms up overhead, and this time placing your right hand on the mat. Lean over so you're opening up in that left side body, finding some space, searching for those fears or those things that you have in tow, becoming aware of them. Inhale your arms back up overhead, and this time on an exhale, release your left hand to the mat, opening on your right side. There is a thought that we store a lot of our trauma, a lot of our emotions actually in our body, in the fibers, the muscles, the tissues of our body. So as we're opening up and as we're moving, we are releasing those things that have been stored so deeply. So as we begin to become aware of those things, don't try to judge them or pretend they're not there or be ashamed of them. Just begin to notice them as you're moving. Arm back up, both arms back up. This time on an exhale, releasing your left hand on your right knee. We'll go into a spinal twist here. And before you even twist your shoulders or your upper back, just begin with your eyes. Let your body know where you are going, offering that peaceful path. And your body will let you know if where you want to go is too far, and listen to that. Inhaling will lengthen your spine, and exhaling will release more space to rotate. We'll be rotating from our mid, upper back, neck, leaving our lower back alone. Release this back to center and we'll twist to the opposite side. You may find that one side is tighter than the other or more open than the other, and that just reminds me of how sometimes we can be in certain situations where our fear feels so much more present, prevalent, and other times it seems like it's shrunk. So let's just be aware of that as we move. Return back to center. Begin to slowly rotate your shoulders up, down, and back a few times. Just loosening those shoulder muscles that we get so tight. We've done that back a few times. Do up, down, and forward. Going the opposite direction. Still those shoulders and begin to rotate your neck slowly. Finding space, noticing any sticky spots. Going in one direction, making a complete circle. And then going the opposite direction, returning that circle back. Placing your arms straight out forward and your palms facing up as if you're holding two trays. Keeping your forearms straight, just begin to rotate your hands at the wrist. And if it's a little circle, wonderful. If it's a bigger circle, wonderful. We're just looking for a little bit of motion concentrated on that wrist area. And then begin to rotate in the opposite direction. Again, just finding any spots, even in the tiniest areas, where that fear and that anxiety might be hiding. You can shake that out and tip back just a little bit so your feet are able to come up off the mat, and just begin to rotate your ankles, wiggle your toes. We use our feet a lot and we like to give them some love. Find yourself in a tabletop position on your mat. So on all fours, knees are under hips, shins and tops of feet are glued to the mat. Wrists are under shoulders. Unless that angle is too intense or feels a bit pinching, then go ahead and step those palms forward just a bit, and that might relieve some of that pressure. And we'll begin a few rounds of cat-cow here. So tipping that pelvis towards your thighs, lowering your belly to the mat, bringing those shoulders together to open up in your chest, opening in your throat, opening that heart, opening up those words that you've spoken to yourself of fear and of doubt, and releasing those. And then tipping that pelvis towards your stomach, engaging those lower abs if you would like, arching in your back, rounding in those shoulders, tipping that chin to your chest into cow or to cat. Go ahead and go through this a few times on your own. Inhaling for cow, opening up in that chest, opening up in that throat if you can. I think so many times our fears are fed by our own words and our own communication to ourselves. So let's literally open up our throats and offer up those feeding words. Back into cat. And finding this rhythm, being here in this present moment with God. Often our fears are based on things that haven't happened yet or may never will. And He calls us to be present with Him, that He is in this present moment, and that is where you find His peace. Turn back to a neutral table. Going to extend your right leg out to the side. Any angle will do, between straight out from your hip to towards the back of your mat, anywhere that feels comfortable. And then you'll begin to rock forward on an inhale, and then exhale. Reach those hips back towards your heel, kind of like a child's pose. And then do this twice more, inhaling forward, exhaling, hips back. Once more, inhaling forward, exhaling, hips back. This time, as you're kind of back up in your table, you can extend that right leg back behind you, and again, rocking forward and back, finding room in that hamstring, your calf, possibly in the bottom of your feet. This feels so good on the bottom of my feet. Finding some stillness there. And kickstand that left foot out to the side. Begin to lift up that right arm into a supported side plank. A couple of things to notice here to find yourself some more support in this shape is that your right foot, the entire foot, is feeling weight and pressure on the floor. So it's not just the outer edge, not just your arch, but the whole foot. Perhaps you may want to try lifting in your hips or in your rib cage just to find a little bit of lift out of that lower arm. You may want to play around with this shape, lifting the extended leg, moving the extended arm. You may want to take that extended leg behind you a bit, even with the toes on the floor, and opening up again in that heart, opening up those fears and offering them to God. Release that back down to a table. We'll do this on the opposite side. So left leg extended out to the side at any angle that works for you. Inhaling forward and rocking back 3 times on this side. Finding openness. Once you've done your 3 rounds, you can extend that left leg behind you, and again rocking forward and back 3 times. I love that when you look at this beginning story of Gideon in Judges chapter 6, over and over again, God is saying, the Lord is with you. I will be with you. I will stay until you return. Peace be to you. Do not fear. You shall not die. God kept reaffirming and reaffirming who He was to Gideon, and that his fear did not need to remain. We'll turn this into a supported side plank. So again, extending that left foot out, spreading the weight all throughout your left foot, lifting up in those hips and those ribs, And again, maybe trying that opening of moving your left foot a little bit behind your body. You might find some more opening there. How many times have we told God, can you just prove that it's you? Can you just prove that you're real? Just give me a sign. And Gideon does just that multiple times. And instead of God being like, dude, I am God, I don't have to prove anything to you, he gently and compassionately confirms and confirms and confirms again and again and again that he is who he says he is. Return back to your table, tucking your toes, bending your knees, and lifting your hips into downward dog. Have a generous bend in your knees as this is our first downward dog. You can pedal out there and roll forward to plank. Step your feet up to meet your hands, and you'll be in forward fold at the top of your mat. Again, bending your knees here as much as you may need to. If you have blocks, we are not going to use them quite yet, but you will want them at the top of your mat. So go ahead and place them there before we get too much farther. Begin to slowly raise yourself all the way up into mountain. Toes, knees, hips, shoulders, chin, everything pointing forward, creating space between your ears and your shoulders, having a responsive knee, and just finding your mountain pose here. I'm going to lead you through 3 rounds of sun salutation. The first round will be very cued, very directive. Second round will be less so. And the third round, you will just have the visual on the screen. At any point, you can make this sun salutation into whatever you want it to be. So don't feel the pressure to feel like you have to memorize it. On an inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift by placing your hands on your shins or your thighs. Your back will be parallel with the ground or closer to your shins. And then release back down to a forward fold. Placing your hands on the mat, step back into plank. You may stay in a high plank or you may put your knees down on the ground. Either way, slowly lower your body all the way down and then lift up into a cobra pose. You can be closer to the mat and do a baby cobra or push up higher on your mat, lifting up even your hips and your thighs into an upward dog. Lots of options here. Lowering back down and then place yourself back up into that downward dog that we did earlier. Taking a few breaths here. Roll forward into plank. Step to the top of your mat into forward fold. Again, halfway lift, your version. Release. And then slowly stand all the way back up into mountain. I will lead you through this one more time with my voice, and you will physically move through it twice more. You're doing great. Inhale, arms up overhead. Release down to your forward fold. Half lift. Forward fold. Step back into plank of your choice. Lower all the way down to the mat. Lift into back bend of your choice. Finding a breath here. Inhale to release that back down. Exhale, excuse me. Inhale into downward dog. Finding a few breaths here. Roll forward into plank. Step forward to the top of your mat into forward fold. Halfway lift. Forward fold. Slowly release yourself all the way up, root to rise into that mountain. We'll do this one more time, and again, you can follow my lead on the screen if you still would like a little extra support. If you feel comfortable and confident, moving on your own does not have to be exactly like what I'm saying or doing. Please feel free to do so. I wanted to read out of the Bible Recap, which is a one-year guide to the Bible. And I love this part because when it says God tells Gideon to deliver Israel from oppression, but Gideon pushes back. He's from the weakest clan in his tribe, and he's the least important person in that clan. God promises to be with him, but Gideon is skeptical. He offers God food and asks for a sign. Then God the Son cooks the food with his staff and disappears. Wow. Gideon realizes whom he's dealing with and panics. But God tells him to receive his peace. Gideon builds an altar and calls it, "The Lord is Peace." Continue to move through your sun salutation, and then once you are finished, meet back in mountain. I love this because it just shows the compassionate heart of God. That He knows how frail and how scared and how fickle we are. And that although an appropriate response to experiencing God would be a little bit of fear, I would think, God reminds him that He is peace and has nothing to do with the fact of who Gideon is, that he is the runt of the litter. And God says, it's not going to be up to you. Just trust me. And God gives him a sign. And He gives him multiple signs after this. But it's just incredible that God is so patient with us. So taking those fears, taking those things that you have become aware of, can you offer them up to God? Just like Gideon offered an offering to God. Can you offer those fears up to Him and in exchange receive His peace? Once you are back into mountain, stepping back with your right foot into a high lunge, and then placing your hands down so that they're framing your right foot, your back knee is still lifted. Lift your right arm so that you're rotating in this lunge. Opening up, offering up those fears, and receiving that peace that God has to offer. Okay, placing your hand back down, lifting back up into a lunge. Might be a little wobbly, and that's all right. Pivoting your back foot, finding yourself into warrior two. Something to think about here is making sure that your hips are even. So you can try straightening that front knee, placing your hands on your hips and just making sure that they are level. And then you can bend back into that front knee. Keeping your bottom half the same, tipping up and back, and your upper body into reverse warrior. Bring that back up to warrior two, and this time tipping forward into side angle. You can use your forearm against your thigh for a boundary, not necessarily a support, but a boundary. A block here would be fine, or reaching your hand towards the mat. We won't be here long. Finding your breath. While we are down in side angle, begin to slowly pivot towards the long edge of your mat, so both feet are pointing your long edge of the mat, into a wide-legged forward fold. Making sure that you're hinging at the hips here and not pulling on your lower back. Again, bringing that block with you can feel nice. can bring that ground a little bit closer to your hands. It might feel a little bit more restorative and nourishing. If you don't want the block, you don't have to use it. It's there for you. Finding your breath, finding that peace that God offers. Placing your hands on your thighs, begin rising back up. Pointing that front foot back towards the front of your mat into Warrior Two. We're going to reverse this all the way back into a high lunge, and then back at the top of your mat into Mountain Hands at Heart. Finding a breath here. Let's do this on the opposite side. So stepping back with your left foot into a high lunge, placing your hands on the mat to frame your front foot, and then opening up with your left arm to rotate this lunge. Finding a breath here, receiving His peace instead of your fear. Place your hand back on the mat, standing back up, as wobbly as it may feel, as scared as you may feel. Finding Warrior Two here. So the back foot is pivoting and pointing towards the long edge of the mat. The arch of your back foot matches the heel of your front foot. You've got those hips even. Arms are extended out. Reverse Warrior. Keeping that lower body the same. And back up to Warrior Two. And then find that side angle on this side. And it might look different than the other side. That's totally fine. Again, finding your breath here. Focusing on who God is and not who you have to be. Gideon thought he had to be some mighty warrior who he is not, but instead it was all about God and what He was going to do to bring glory. All right, let's move this into a wide-legged forward fold. Again, hinging at the hips. You can bend in your knees as much as you would like. Finding breath, you might find movement here. Hands on your thighs, slowly begin to roll back up. Warrior Two. High lunge, back up to mountain. Well done. This time we're going to step back with our right foot into that lunge, but we're going to drop that back knee. Then you're going to place your hands on the inside of that front foot. We're going to prepare for lizard. So again, if you have blocks and you would like them close by, go ahead and have those. And before we get into lizard, we're just going to rock forward and back 3 times, just like we did earlier. Finding some space and some opening, warming up that hip flexor a little bit. And once you've done that a few times, placing your hands on the mat inside that front foot, reaching up and back into a little bit of a back bend, that opening there, and then lowering down on blocks, on your forearms, onto the mat, into lizard. He is the God of peace, that He takes our fears and drives them out with His perfect love. We're going to take that left hand, rotate this lizard, again opening up, looking in all of the secret places where our fear may be hidden. Like I said, all of Gideon's actions are driven by fear because there's so many spots inside of him that he hasn't gotten rid of it yet. So maybe find all of those hidden spots where fear is tucked in and release those and receive the peace that God has to offer us. Put your hand back down. Begin to slowly bring that back foot up to match your front foot, and you may want to point them out as we get into a squat. If you would like a block under your buns for a seat, that's a wonderful idea. Hands at heart center. We won't be here long. Finding your breath. We're going to go into lizard on the opposite side. So extending your left foot behind you, knee on the ground, hands inside that right foot, rocking forward and back a few times, just finding space. Okay, and then placing your hands in side of your front foot, lifting up into a back bend, and then releasing down again onto blocks, forearms, anything, the mat, into lizard. Offering those fears, receiving his peace. Doing it again and again and again. Asking God, asking him for a reminder of who he is. All right, we're going to go back into that squat. So gently push yourself back up, bringing up that back foot to meet the front. It's the last squat, so whether you hate it or love it, now you know. Place a block under your seat if you would like that. All right, gently pushing yourself up into a forward fold. Take as much time as you need. Rocking side to side here, maybe grabbing opposite elbows, just integrating all of that movement and openness. Slowly stand up into mountain. If you want to shake things out a little bit, that's great. Sometimes those positions can feel very intense, so it's okay to kind of feel loosey-goosey afterwards. All right, forward fold. Place your hands on the mat into plank and then into downward dog. We're going to lift up your right foot behind you into a three-legged dog, and then bend your knee and open up your hips. So your hips are in alignment with each other, trying to keep the same weight in both hands, both shoulders, opening up. Again, we hold a lot of emotion and other things in our bodies and in our hips especially. So that's why we're doing a lot of hip openers. Okay, and then go ahead and bring that right leg forward, and you're going to place your shin behind your palms as we bring down our hips into pigeon pose. So that back knee will be down. If pigeon is not your thing, not your jam, then you can do deer pose. So that would bring your back knee into the arch of your front foot. So it's a little less sensation in your hips. If neither of those are fine or fun, you don't want to do them, totally fine. You can do a seated pigeon. So your foot is on top of your thigh and your leg can be flat on the ground. You can bring it up to a bent knee as much as you want. Any of those variations are wonderful. So finding pigeon here, however you're going to do it, lifting up into a bit of a back bend to find the opening and then lowering down. Releasing those fears. The messaging here today is not deep or intense. And in fact, it's quite repetitive, but I think it's because Gideon asked God the same questions over and over again. Are you sure? Are you sure I'm not enough? I'm a runt. I can't do this. I'm too scared. And I love what she says in the Bible recap. She says that Gideon needs to hear who God is. God doesn't counter Gideon's doubt by puffing him up with positive self-talk. He says, I am with you. And he is with you. He is where the joy is. Release this pigeon slowly, whatever variation you're doing, back up into downward dog. Just kind of move your hips back and forth. Pedal those legs out. We'll do this on the other side. So lifting your left leg up and back, bending your knee and opening that hip, releasing those fears, receiving his peace, reminding yourself, letting him remind you who he is. It's not about puffing ourselves up. I can do this. She believed she could, and so she did. That has nothing to do with it. Our victory is found in him. We are very much nothing without the God who created us. The simple fact that he creates us proves that. So it's all about focusing on him. Bring that left leg forward into your version of pigeon. Again, lifting up into a slight back bend just to open up in the chest, and then lowering down onto blocks to your forearms. If you'd like to stick a block under your hip that has the front knee, that might feel nice and supporting. We will not be here forever. He is the God of peace. Slowly release back out of that, pushing up into that downward dog. Again, pedaling it out, integrating it into your hips, into your body. And lower your knees into table. And then finding child's pose. Your knees can be close together or far apart. If you want to stick a pillow under your body for a little bit of comfort, that might feel nice. So after Gideon offers another offering, he tells God, realizes who God is, and starts to panic, like it said in the Bible recap. And in Judges 6:23, it says, "The Lord had said to him, 'Peace be to you. Do not fear. You shall not die.' Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it, 'The Lord is Peace.'" To this day, it still stands at Ophrah, which belongs to the Abzerites. He built an altar. He built a reminder that the Lord is peace. Where can you build an altar, a reminder that he is the Lord of peace in your life? Where can you stick that? Where can you see it every day? So that when you begin to be afraid, you can look to it and remember the Lord is peace. Go ahead and find yourself on your back. If you have any props for Shavasana, have those close by. Laying on your back, extending your legs straight up in the air. Nothing too active here, just kind of rocking side to side. Slowly begin to bring your knees into your chest. Again, rocking side to side. If you would like to turn this into a happy baby, perhaps grabbing your toes with your peace fingers, the inside or the outside of your foot. If those are not accessible, you can try grabbing your shins. Continuing to rock, finding that rhythm that we were looking for at the beginning with our breath. In Zephaniah, God talks about singing over us. I'm going to find the verse for us. Continue to move. It says, "With his love he will calm all your fears. He will rejoice over you with joyful songs." Another version says that he sings over you. So as we find this rhythm in our movement, You hear the songs of peace being sung over you. Placing your feet on the floor, lift up your left foot and place it on your right thigh, finding a figure 4 here. You may keep your foot on the mat or thread your hands behind your right thigh and begin to gently pull it towards your chest. The activity should be coming from your lower body, so your upper body should be at ease. You may want to find stillness or again that rhythmic rocking, receiving the songs of peace that God is singing over you, just like a lullaby. Release your feet back to the mat. We'll do this on the second side. Placing your right foot on your left thigh, finding the degree of sensation that you are looking for, so you can leave it on the mat or lift your leg up towards your chest. Finding that breath, receiving that peace. Setting your feet back on your mat, begin to wiper those knees, finding some openness and softness in your lower back. Once your knees are over to the right, begin to kind of tuck your hips under each other as you're in a spinal twist, but keeping your shoulders as flat as you can on the mat. If you'd like to look the opposite direction of your knees, that could feel nice. Gently rolling back to center, finding this on the opposite side, so letting your knees drop to the left. Placing your hips under each other, arms out, face looking the opposite direction. Finding that breath. May you and your breath be a reminder that He is peace. If there are any final movements that your body is asking for at this time, please go ahead and respond. Once you are ready, you may go ahead and set yourself up for Shavasana, whatever that looks like for you. It could be lying straight down on your mat, having cushions, no cushions. It could be child's pose, it could be seated. One variation I will offer you is another passive hip opener, again releasing those fears that are often tucked into our hips. It's called a reclined bound angle or a reclined butterfly. Butterfly is a shape I think a lot of us are familiar with. So keeping your upper body laying on the mat, your feet just come together. And the closer they are to your body, the little bit more intense of a stretch it will be. And we're not really looking for a stretch, so go ahead and create a little bit more space there. And we'll just have a slight opening in your hips. You may want to put blocks or blankets under your knees to offer support. The idea is that you're just resting in this opening pose. You have the freedom to move from your Shavasana position, so it is one of complete comfort. I'm going to give you the next 5 minutes of silence to rest and to receive that song of peace that God is singing over you. I will bring you back with my voice to close this practice. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. Trying some small movements like wiggling your fingers and toes, gently moving your head side to side. Increasing these movements to begin to flutter your eyes open, become aware of this present moment, this present space on your mat. Taking the next however many moments, finding that breath, that rhythm. Find yourself in a seated position. Placing your hands on your heart. We'll end this practice with this very simple prayer that you're welcome to echo with your own heart. Oh God, even with my fear still in tow, you remind me who you are. You are my peace. God, I thank you for my friends who have chosen to practice with me today. I pray that not only do they feel a sense of peace in their bodies, but also in their minds and in their hearts. I pray that they would build an altar, a reminder that you are peace, and that they would return to it each time their fear starts to creep in. I pray that they would go forward in peace, in love, and in joy. In Jesus' name, amen.